About a year or two ago, my boyfriend and I went on a camping trip over the summer. I was about 25 at the time, and my boyfriend, Andre, was about a year older than me. Because it matters for this story, we're a biracial couple, as Andre is black and I'm Caucasian. Anyway, he and I had been driving for about 3 or 4 hours on day 2 of the trip, and we were coming up on the camping site. I won't give the name of the site because what happened wasn't their fault, and I don't want to get them in trouble. We pulled into the lot and walked into the main office. There was just a registration desk where Andre approached the counter to check in, and some camping gear spread out on display around the rest of the area. As Andre was talking to the guy, I wandered around the small shop, looking at some of the camping gear, when I noticed 2 guys who were in the same aisle I was. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I noticed one of them nod towards Andre, and the second guy frowned. The 2 didn't look like they were trouble or anything. In fact, they were both kind of overweight and doughy looking. They were both in jeans and muscle shirts, with some hiking boots on. But beyond that, there wasn't anything really remarkable about them. In fact, I wasn't even sure at the time that they were looking at Andre. They could have just been looking up by coincidence as they were thinking of something else. Andre called me over, having finished signing up, and as I walked over, I noticed the 2 guys watching me out of the corner of my eye. They seemed surprised to see a skinny white girl interacting with a black partner. But I still didn't think much of it at the time, as I'd only gotten a glance at them. I looked back only for a moment as we left the office, and I could see the 2 guys had turned back to the gear they had been looking at, but were muttering to themselves, and for some reason, that had given me an odd feeling. Andre and I left the office and grabbed our gear from the back of our car. We began hiking to the spot and were laughing and joking as we went along. After about an hour or so, Andre finally asked,
"Who were those guys you were looking at back there?"
He had a playful look, as if to say, "You're into fat middle-aged guys?" And I told him about what had happened in the office. Andre didn't say anything for a few minutes, before telling me not to worry about it. He and I had never had any trouble with racist people before, although I guess we had always wondered about it in the back of our minds. We got to our site at last, by mid-afternoon, and we got our tent set up. The area was beautiful, with a clearing for the tent, a small pit for us to build a fire, and trees all over the place. Even the sound of a brook nearby. Andre and I explored the area while gathering some wood for the fire to cook supper on. And when we got back to the site, I crawled into the tent to get some of the canned food from our bags. We cooked it and sat by the fire talking for a while, breathing in the fresh air. Andre had his arm around my shoulders, and I snuggled up to him, feeling totally secure. Before we turned in, I had gone into the tent to change into an old baggy t-shirt and some old flannel shorts, when I heard some rustling outside the tent. I poked my head out of the flap and saw Andre placing some of the unused kindling for the fire around the area and covering them with some leaves. "What are you doing?" I asked when he came back over to the tent. And he looked at me seriously.
It's just in case.
Was all he said. And I asked what he meant. He paused, then told me how he had grown up in a rough neighborhood. He said that he and his father and his grandfather had once gone camping when he was small, and his grandfather had done the same trick with the sticks, saying he didn't want anyone sneaking up on them. I realized he was talking about racists, and the two white guys from the shop. I hugged him and nuzzled my face into his neck, while he hugged me back and said it would be alright. Much later that night, around what must have been 2 a.m, Andre woke me up by gently shaking me.
Hey, Sarah, get up.
He whispered, and when I opened my mouth, he put his hand over it, and with his other hand put a finger to his mouth to make a shh noise. Suddenly, I heard the sound of distant twigs snapping, and the faint whisper of voices. My eyes went wide, and Andre motioned for me to follow him out of the tent. I silently crept along behind him, and just over a small hill, about 40 meters out from the tent, I could see the dim light of a flashlight. I was frozen on the spot when Andre took my hand and led me over to the brook nearby. I was still totally silent, and to my confusion, Andre stepped into the water and took my hand to lead me after him. The water was freezing, but we only took a few steps before Andre led me out again and made sure our bare feet left wet footprints on the rocks going in the other direction. I could hear the guys getting closer, and Andre motioned for me to follow him down the river, the way we had come, so we could climb up one of the trees. He made sure to help me up, pushing on my rear end to boost me as I climbed up the trunk. Soon enough, we found 2 branches sturdy enough to hold our weight. We waited in total silence as we saw the light come over the hill and heard rustling noises, as if someone was going through the tent. It was only a moment before they realized we were gone, and they started coming towards us. Andre caught my eye and made another shh gesture. The 2 fat guys were coming towards us, and the light came across our wet footprints going in the other direction. And to my immense relief, they started going that way. I suddenly went totally still as I heard another noise, the sound of 2 more people coming from our campsite. A bright flashlight shone across the river at the 2 guys who were walking along the bank, trying to see more footprints. To my horror, I could see in the light that one of the guys was holding a knife. They took off at the light, and whoever was holding the second flashlight went after them. I could hear the sounds of crashing through trees before the sounds of thuds and yelling came back to my ears. The bright light came back around towards our tree, and someone called out for us. When they got closer, we saw they were wearing a uniform, like a security guard or something, and I thought it must be a park ranger or something. Andre helped me down, and we approached the ranger. He explained that he and his partner were the night crew, rangers who sometimes patrolled to make sure that campers and animals weren't getting out of hand. They had started their shift at midnight, only 2 hours ago, when they had seen a note from the guy who checked us in. It was a description of the 2 fat guys, who the guy at the desk had heard talking about the two of us. The manager had recognized them from the area and knew they ran with a pretty racist group and warned the patrols about them. The guy and his partner had caught the two, and they were taking them to the local police station a few miles away. I was shaking, and even Andre looked relieved that the danger was over. The guy waited until we gathered our gear and drove us back to the ranger station. We gave our statement and got a few hours sleep. We went back to the site in the morning to grab our tent and headed back to the car. We cut our vacation short and headed home, where both sets of parents were upset by what had happened, but also relieved. I've never forgotten what happened though, or the crazy things racism can make people do.
Please leave your message